Welcome to The Bone, the podcast that goes deeper. Here we cut through the noise and get straight to the core of the issues that matter. From real stories to raw truths, we dive deep into the conversations that shape our world and challenge our thinking. We're not afraid to dig in and get to the marrow of it all. Whether it's life, culture, or business in sports medicine, we're here to break it down raw and real. No filters, no fluff, just to the bone. With your host, Shelby Daly, we're getting to the bone. This is a clinically pressed, approved CEU podcast. Find the quiz to gain credit at clinicallypressed.org/courses. Clinically Pressed Company, making the complicated simple through results that give back. Find out more at clinicallypressed.org. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Bone. Today I have Marissa Villafuerte-Brooks, and she's an athletic trainer that works with public safety. How I know her, I don't know her, but she caught my eye when she was there was a post going around that she was presenting at PSATS, the Public Safety Athletic Trainer Society, about how to navigate workers' comp and what is an athletic trainer's part in the process. And I think there are some unknown facts about how it all works. It seems like it kind of makes working with these athletes difficult, but I want to have Marissa on to talk a little bit more. Welcome on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So currently you are working in the public safety sector, and you're based in Statesboro, Georgia.
Yes.
And you are the head athletic trainer for the city of Statesboro, providing care to firefighters, police officers, and other employees within the department.
Yes. And all of the city as well. So I can even see as far as to the mayor as well.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a little bit, that's not the norm usually.
No.
So if anybody needs something in Statesboro, let Marissa know and she'll let the mayor get it done.
Yes.
So getting into public safety, being an athletic trainer, what's your favorite thing about this setting ultimately?
Ultimately, it's definitely the rehab and returning people to work. Not that it wasn't satisfying to return people to a sport, but seeing that it's their livelihood and everything like that, it's amazing when you get to watch them just get back into work and how much they come and say thank you so much for getting me back here, and just because that's their paycheck. And so I definitely think it's very rewarding for the rehab, but I get to go so much more in depth, and the doctors I have are wonderful, so they allow me to do so much more than I ever could have imagined. And just taking them through all of that and allowing them to get back to work, get back to what they love. It's really fulfilling. And that's more athletic training, I guess, on the athletic training side. But the other part too is I get to work with adults, which is wonderful. And so really it's also about getting to know them and building friendships. I love being able to ask them, how are your kids doing? And actually kind of know what they're doing on the weekend. And so it's a little bit of a different thing where you can get a little more in depth on getting to know them. And so that part is absolutely wonderful as well.
Yeah, it is nice when they speak the same language as you. I don't know how athletic trainers in high schools are surviving right now, but
Yes.
Power to them.
Yes.
So how did you get involved in public safety, and was this your original goal?
This was not my original goal. No, the original goal was to work for soccer somewhere. But no, I ended up doing research on firefighters in Cleveland, Tennessee with my professor my senior year. And very basic stuff, but they kept having a heat-related illness during the recruit class. And they brought us in to watch the hydration status. So I got to test a lot of urine. But we did all of this research on them, and basically we got to decide if the recruit was ready to go back in and actually be able to go out and perform the task they need to that day, or if they had a certain amount of time to try to get rehydrated enough to be able to do it. And if I remember properly, it had been 10 years since they, um, every year they had at least one heat related illness. And then once we
Mm.
came in and did our research and decided if they were allowed to participate or not, they actually had no heat related illnesses. And we got to look a little deeper into that and set some protocols for them on what they could follow. And so I fell in love with working with them, presented my research at a conference, and then I had a professor from Georgia Southern University that found me there and was like, "Do you want to be a graduate assistant athletic trainer at the city of Statesboro?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." I never visited Statesboro. That's how much I wanted to work with public safety. My first day was literally my first day in Statesboro, everything. And but I have loved it ever since. And I just got lucky and they wanted to keep me full time. And so after my graduate assistant position, I just moved into it full time.
Wow,
Yeah.
quite a journey.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I mean that's where I feel sometimes we get so concentrated on the sports side of it, and some of these opportunities for other settings doesn't really come up during the educational process. And I think that's a really cool pathway that you took ultimately. So providing care to this demographic, what are some of the hardships, maybe difficulties, that you wouldn't see in a normal athletic training room?
Yeah, that's a great question. um, I think some of the biggest hardships truly is to remember that you're not dealing with kids or college athletes.
Hmm.
We really can't make the decision for them. That was something that was really hard for me to learn. I can't be like, "Oh, well, you can't go to work today because I say so." Um, and in high school settings, college settings, well, you can't play today because you're hurt and coach is going to agree with me. These are adults making their money, their living, and so if you tell them they can't work, it's just a complete shutdown, and they're like, "That's not possible. I need my paycheck." And so I've really had to take a step back and learn that I have to give them the choice. Even if I know they need to see the doctor, if I know that they most likely are going to need surgery, I've had to figure out how to explain everything to where I give them the choice of, well, will you do rehab with me for 3 weeks? And if it doesn't get better, then will you go? And that seems to really help them kind of come to the conclusion that, yeah, I know I need to go to the doctor. And usually they make it about a week and then like, okay, you're right. But um, that was one of my biggest challenges because when I first told somebody they had to go to the doctor and realized that I couldn't just walk up to their boss and be like, take them out of work. Um, uh, that was a challenging part for me was that. But then the other part too is they come see me during work hours. And so it's very challenging to find times that work for them sometimes. So that's where I'm very grateful that I do have students. I am a preceptor, so my students have been a wonderful help on being able to squeeze patients in during the day because there's people that I know that they can be with, and then I can work with the other one. Um,
Hmm.
but I guess that is a huge challenge though for me because I do have, I believe it's up to 378 employees now, and there's
Mm.
just usually just me. So
Yeah,
that is another challenge is getting everybody in and making sure that everybody's getting the same kind of treatment. And how do I do this? Because I do get to spend more one-on-one time with them, and that's part of what they like of me being there is that I actually watch them do every single part of their rehab. And then to get them to do their rehab, for most of them, I have to agree to some kind of modality because that's the encouragement to get through.
that's a
So
selling point.
yes, exactly. Yes. So I would say those were the most challenging for me, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, with you being the only one at this point, are you only doing evaluation or are you doing prevention programs too?
I am doing some prevention programs as much as I possibly can. I do a movement routine with public works and public utilities. Um, it's basically just 3 stretches 3 stability and 3 strengthening exercises that they could do anywhere. So I tried to program it in a way where even if they're next to their work truck and they had
Mm.
5 minutes to do something, they could work on these exercises. And I go do that every other Wednesday with them to kind of refresh their brains. And so I did about, I think it's 45 weeks of
Oh, wow.
exercises. Yes. And pretty much I just keep recycling them because by the time I make it back to the first week, they forget all the other ones.
Yeah.
So, but just to keep them going. And then I do try to incorporate some other injury prevention just when people come in and they're there and I'm just kind of watching because I do work in the city gym, so I can see other
Mm.
people working out and I can walk over and be like, hey, that form's not right, let's change it and let's work on this. um, but other than that, we do also have the opportunity where Georgia Southern, the university has a program where they do a lot of the personal training side of things. So
Mm.
I'm kind of in a lucky position where they also help a lot with the injury prevention because they come over and make sure that they're actually putting the firefighters and police officers specifically through different exercises and workouts and stuff like that. And so I'm able to watch that as well and kind of nitpick where I need to and stuff like that. But the biggest thing is the movement routine. I
Mhm.
used to be able to do it with City Hall and all of them, but now with the amount of patients I take in, it can be very hard to get the injury prevention side. So,
Yeah.
mhm,
Well, so with the office staff, is it
mhm.
more ergonomics and stuff that you see, I guess?
Yes, yes, ergonomics for sure. I have gone a couple times over there and actually like looked at their office setup, and I never thought I would say that, but um, telling them, hey, when you're turning, you actually have to turn your whole body. You can't just turn your head. And when you tell them that, it's like such a amazing thing to them because they're like, I never thought about that. That would make my neck hurt. Um, but yes, so going and looking at their office setup, what does it look like? What can we do? And I just did one the other day, and the biggest thing was actually getting just a foam pad for their back was what
Mm.
was going to correct most of it. But yes, definitely ergonomics, but also just general things. I don't want to say they're very clumsy, but their stairs at City Hall are
Mm.
ridiculously narrow, and so I've had so many sprained ankles. I mean, and I'm also allowed to see them even if it's not a work related injury. So you also got a lot of
Oh.
people coming in that over the weekend I was outside doing yard work, and I hurt my wrist. So what do I do now? So it's kind of both. But usually, if it's work related for the city hall people, yeah, more ergonomics. But
Mhm.
you would be surprised how many of them actually get a ton of different injuries that you don't expect.
Yeah. So you have the corporate athlete along with
Mhm.
the first
Yeah.
responder athlete,
Yes.
so quite a mix.
Yes. Oh yes.
So I guess that's a good segue. So
Hmm.
with your setup,
Yeah.
you can see they're your patient demographic
Hmm.
ultimately,
Yeah.
but breaking it up on these home injuries versus work injuries, you probably treat those home injuries like a regular athletic trainer just in
Yeah.
house. But then if there's on the job injuries, you have to go through workers' comp.
Hmm. Yes.
So, for those people that have not had to deal with workers' comp,
Mhm,
can you give us a quick rundown on the basics of what it is, why it matters,
mhm.
and why you don't see it in all settings, maybe?
Yes, yes. So with workers' comp, general basic, the reason they have it is if you get injured at work, you report it so that you can go through a whole process, which I think you have some questions for me on it later, but a whole process of what's the doctor I go see, what's the next step, what insurance is covering me, who's my case manager, who's my case adjuster. But they have that there for the employee mainly for the fact that if you're out of work, that you're still getting a decent amount of your paycheck and that you're not actually paying for any of your medical bills. And that's the big purpose of workers' comp. I know for where I work, they get 60% of their paycheck when they're out on workers' comp, unless they can do light duty, as they call it. But I know every state's a little bit different on how much they offer when they're on workers' comp. But that's the biggest reason, is to make sure that they're still getting steady paychecks, and to make sure that all of their medical bills and medical care is taken care
Gotcha.
of. Mhm.
So for every case of an injury at work,
Mhm.
do you have to go through workers' comp, or can they just see you directly?
They do not have to go through workers' comp. No, they can just see me directly. And usually, the typical process is, no matter what, they have an injury at work, I make sure that they still fill out their first report of injury. Because if you do not fill that out and later on it gets worse, then they can't claim workers' comp anymore. So, no matter what, you want them to fill that out even before they come to see me, just in case. So,
Hmm.
once I do see them, though, if I'm like, hey, this is just a simple grade 1 ankle sprain, there's no reason we need to send you to the doctor, you can still work with it, and we can go from there. Um, then usually I just talk to my HR and say I can handle it, but they've got their first report in. So if it doesn't get better, we do need to send them, then at least they have that documentation ready. So they don't always have to go to the doctor just because of that. And I can kind of figure it out with them and also HR. But again, a lot of it comes down to their choice. Just because I say it's just a simple grade 1 doesn't mean that they don't want to go get it checked out. But even then, I will still go to the doctor's appointment with them. That way, I'm there to help navigate. Because not all the time will the case manager or case adjuster who's in charge of their case, they won't always make it to the appointments. And so to have a voice there, I still try to go with
Gotcha.
them. Hmm.
So with workers' comp, with the new settings that are popping up for athletic
Mhm.
trainers, obviously industrial setting, they utilize workers' comp also.
Mhm.
Um, do you have any insights on why there are many limitations on the process of a workers' comp claim, on why athletic trainers might not be utilized as much in the return to work process?
Yes, yeah. So a lot of it comes down to the fact that for some states, and this is why I'm glad I looked over previous emails, but for some states, you cannot bill for workers' comp. So for my state, I cannot bill for anything that I do, which means that based off insurance point of view, I don't technically count, which is weird because I do a lot of workers' comp. So the reason that you can count in the state that I'm in, and I believe the proper terms is nope, getting that wrong. Sorry, my bad. But the reason that I can work with them is the doctors will write a note specifically, and you have to make sure they write that the patient is allowed to work with the athletic trainer, and make sure that it's, whether it's the city of Statesboro or it's your name, just making sure that you're in their notes, because then when it does come down to how the insurance will bill them and everything, as long as we're in the note, then that doctor can say, I can confirm that they have been doing their rehab, their treatment that they're supposed to do, because I sent them to the athletic trainer.
Okay.
While other states can already bill them and don't have any issues, they can go immediately to the athletic trainer. So that's where I would say that some of the problems come into play, is if you don't have a good relationship with your doctors, then the athletic trainer can't help with anything on the workers' comp side, because then if you don't have that relationship to say, hey, yes, I know I can trust you to do this person's rehab, then that doctor will not write that note to allow them to work with you. So it just depends on the state you're in, and every state is a little different. So I would encourage everybody to see um, or to look into that and see what is required and what they can and can't do. And besides the fact, if we're talking specifically on the industrial side too, a lot of the industrial places have athletic trainers and physical therapists on staff. So
Mm,
then it tends to get passed to the physical therapist for when it comes to the rehab and the treatment and all of that.
gotcha.
Comfortable, low profile, flexible, and easy to put on, the Vero ankle brace is simply the best ankle brace for those who move. And that's just about everybody. This brace is adaptable for any phase of injury recovery, whether you're recovering from an ankle sprain, require extra support for your day-to-day, or want to boost your performance. The Vero ankle brace delivers. The Vero ankle brace uses every movement and every step to give you extra boost. The 3-in-1 brace can be worn on either foot, making it the most optimal ankle brace for injury recovery and prevention. The removable stirrups, easy adjust Velcro, and breathable design adapt to your ankle as your strength returns, helping to protect you from re-injury. A dynamic support brace designed by leading orthopedic foot and ankle surgeons. The Vero ankle brace effortlessly adapt to your movements, offering dynamic energy return and support with each step. VeroAnkle.com. Check it out for yourself. VeroAnkle.com. That's VeroAnkle.com.
Would us being approved through third-party reimbursement change anything for you? Would it make it easier, harder?
It would probably make it easier for me. I think I wouldn't have to argue with insurance companies, and I haven't had an experience of arguing with a case manager or a case adjuster yet. Most of the time, they're very open about having the patients come work with me. But it would
Mhm.
definitely help on the insurance side, because if we were recognized as somebody that can treat them, at least within the state of Georgia, it would make my life so much easier. I wouldn't, this sounds bad, but I probably wouldn't have to make sure that I'm at every appointment or go plead my case to the doctor as much as I do right now, which
Gotcha.
thankfully, like I said, I've built up my relationships with my doctors. And so that would be another thing I would encourage. Build your relationships with your doctors if you know you're going to work workers' comp, because if they know they can trust you, it does make your life so much easier. And it definitely helps too, because you end up being the voice for your patient. And
Mhm.
so, because they don't, most of the time, they don't know what you're seeing on their chart and everything. And so, I just had one that I saw specifically, the doctor said, no jumping. And then I'm looking at all of their physical therapy that they're doing in this workers' comp case, and there's a ton of jumping. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to overstep the physical therapist. So I went to the appointment with them, and I said to the doctor, I'm not trying to overstep, but my patient here is not supposed to be jumping, but they are jumping, and I don't want to ruin anything for them. And that's when the doctor like pulled it up and was like, they are jumping. They're not supposed to be doing that. And so we got it all worked out. But if you didn't have an athletic trainer there that's looking over all of those notes, that might not have been caught. And
Yeah.
something that shouldn't have happened is happening, and now they're injured again. So that's why you want to make sure that you're going to the doctor's appointments too, because it does help build that rapport. And then you also make it a lot easier for yourself on if they'll approve you to help them through their workers' comp case.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where we have smart patients, but they're just following the expert. So
Yes.
one can say one thing, you don't know who's connecting in the background and actually
Hmm.
talking it through, and then you get to the other expert and maybe they didn't read the note super in depth and then they just followed them. So I
Yeah.
think that's some of the issues with healthcare right now is I don't I think we're overwhelmed ultimately, but we do
Hmm.
miss some of these things and there's no one really case managing it, which I think
Yeah.
athletic trainers do a very good job of ultimately.
Yes.
Um, so you talked about babysitting the patient case.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
talked a little bit about the third party reimbursement.
Hmm.
Do you see any other unique roles that athletic trainers are involved in with the workers' comp system?
Yeah, really it honestly depends on how much you want to get involved. Because you do have to ask yourself how far you want to get involved into it, because you do take a certain responsibility on and everything as you involve yourself more. So really it's how much do you want to get involved. So with me, the good thing of having an athletic trainer is when they do fill out their first report and they come to me, I can immediately be their voice. And so I can call my HR and say, hey, I have a person here that probably actually needs emergency surgery. Do you give me permission to call my doctors and get them in right now? Because there is a certain process they have to follow. And if it's not approved to send them yet, then you're going to ruin their chances of what they get for workers' comp. So,
Mhm.
there is the other part of it of voicing to the HR what they need to do, and going through the step by step process of um, showing them, hey, like this isn't a true emergency, this isn't an emergency. And then at that point, it's also how much do you want to communicate with the HR, keep them up to date, ask them what you're allowed to do. But, it's also, you know, do you think you can take on these cases? Because if your caseload is very big, you don't want to add in too much. But, you know, being able, I keep coming back to it, but it's how much do you want to be their voice? Because that's really what you're going to end up doing. And because I try to keep thinking of examples for you. So I had one who needed surgery for their wrist, and it was bad enough that like the doctor knew they needed to do it that week. And then they got it approved, and they got there, they had the IV in, everything was ready, about to get rolled back, and she gets told that workers' comp didn't approve it. And she was like, "No, they definitely did." And I even heard that phone call. So I was like, "Oh, they definitely did." So I'm getting blown up with phone calls. So is the case manager. So me and the case manager are trying to work together. We're not understanding what's going on. And so the other part of it is, are you ready to call insurance companies? Are you ready to blow up case manager and case adjusters' phones when things aren't going right? And that sounds terrible, but that's kind of what you're there for. You're trying to be the one that actually helps manage them through it. And even though that's what the case manager is there for, when you work with public safety or even just anybody within the city, their trust goes to the athletic trainer. That's who they know, that's who they're going to call. And so you're going to end up just being the person that manages all of it. Their
Yeah.
doctor's appointments, when they're talking to the case manager, even though that's what the case manager is for, you just end up being the person that kind of manipulates everything. And so with that story I was just telling you about, we had to just make so many phone calls. And the funny part to it, because you have seen, I'm so great with different time zones. Um, um,
Yep.
None of us thought about how the insurance company was an hour behind us. So nobody's
Ugh,
picking up our phone calls because they're not open yet. Um,
yeah.
so
Great.
finally, yes, finally we got a hold of them, and we were literally within 5 minutes of the doctor saying, I'm just not doing the surgery. And that's when we got it approved and everything. So I think that's the other aspect you have to be ready for if you're going to take on workers' comp cases is, you know, being able to make these phone calls, being able to shove yourself into the situation, because there is pushback sometimes. Like I said, I haven't had a complete scenario where I haven't had a case manager or a case adjuster that doesn't want me to be a part of it. Because at the end of the day, as much as we are there for the athlete, tactical athlete, I should say that. That's what they are. But as much as we are there for them, half the reason we're here as well is to save the city money.
Hmm.
So, being able to come and do some of your rehab with the athletic trainer, you're also saving the city money, because now the insurance company isn't paying for every single physical therapy visit that they originally would have had to pay for. Um,
Yeah.
so I know that's like a whole crazy big answer, but I think it really comes down to how much do you want to insert yourself, because you can be a part of every single part of talking to HR, the insurance company, the case managers, case adjusters, doctors. It's just how much of that do you want to take on, and are you ready for all of
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good segue into the
that?
question I just made up in my head. But for return on investment, are you
Mhm.
the one tracking that? And how do you manage that and present it?
Yes. So I am mainly the one tracking it, but I do have a coworker as well that she's amazing. Her name is Rachel Lacey, and she's awesome. And so we go and present on a lot of this together. So she really does kind of get the Excel files together, and she put all of how we track it. So it's not necessarily completely 100%, but how we track it is based off of Medicare costs. We just went with the lowest one we could find, and then we just put in for each treatment, evaluation, everything based off of our PTs that we have at Optum. This is how
Mhm.
much they would charge for the Medicare costs, and we just placed it there. And then I enter everything in that I do, all of the therapeutic exercises, modalities, everything, and then it will calculate that, so that when we talk about return of investment of how much was saved in that one patient, you're actually looking at the lowest of the low number. And so if you're like, if we're, I had one that we ended up finding out it was an ACL. We saved, if I remember right off the top of my head, I think it was about $35,000 with the whole case, and that was based off of just Medicare costs. And so
Yeah.
really it was probably way more than that. But just that alone, with the average of what an AT is making, you're almost saving almost more than half of what an average AT is making in just one patient alone.
Yeah.
And so that's how we're trying to keep track of it, is calculating all of that out and then taking it to the city and showing them how much they're saving. But then also, um, you know, trying to get this in other places, because we are trying to get this not just in Statesboro, but other places of, hey, this is just one patient. Can you imagine if we could work with multiple workers' comp cases, how much you're saving as the city? But then also the other part of return of investment is how quickly are you getting them back? So that same
Yep.
ACL, the doctor said, oh, you won't return for 12 months. Well, we got them back in 6 months because they can come in every single day and work with me, compared to with PT, you're only seeing them maybe twice a week if you're lucky, because that's the other part about workers' comp, is you only get approved for so many. So sometimes they're only going once a week. And
Yeah.
so you're also getting a return investment because now you're getting an employee back quicker and you're not having to spend as much money because of having to add more PT sessions and add more. So
Yeah.
um, that's where you get the return.
Yeah, no. And then I even think, from my knowledge, is it's even the cost of the missed days, like you had mentioned,
Yes.
of
Hmm.
having to pay somebody the 60% salary for not getting any work out of them. Not saying
Exactly.
they're lazy, but
Yeah.
it's just that they're incapacitated and can't perform the job duties. So you still
Hmm.
have to pay that. And then you have to pay the person that's covering their job. And then they're
Exactly.
probably getting time and a half. And,
Yes.
it's just going down the rabbit hole of how much money is actually going out the window because somebody's injured. So,
Exactly. Yes.
you know,
Hmm.
uh, I keep trying to make that comparison to athletics in college, and
Hmm.
I just the ROI just does not compute it like that cleanly,
Yes.
like you just explained. And
Hmm.
that's where we keep using that example for the college settings, and I don't think ROI is a good example because it's socialized healthcare, and there's not much money being
Yes.
crossing hands and all that stuff. So is it a really good measure? I don't think it's a great measure.
Yeah. It's definitely great in my setting and in
Yeah.
industrial settings.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree with you. Hmm.
I just think it gets confused ultimately of what we're
Yes.
doing in those settings.
Hmm.
Um so let's see, where was I at? Uh okay, we already went through all of that, so you
Which
covered it.
you reminded me too. That is the other thing to think about, since you mentioned all the other stuff. The other part we're helping with on the return of investment is how quickly we're getting them into the doctor. So by having an
Mhm.
AT that works with these doctors, um, usually once the approval goes through, now the patient's waiting 5 more days because that's just when the
Mhm.
doctor was available. But because athletic trainers have the nice uh, phone number of the doctor, you can call and get them in way quicker. So my city's also seeing the difference in just saving a few days of lost work just by me bumping them up in the line and getting
Yeah.
them in, if not that day, the next day. So that is another thing to think about too when it's in this setting as well.
Do you guys have an accidental insurance or secondary insurance, or that's technically the workers' comp,
That's
correct?
technically the workers' comp. Yes, yes.
Okay.
So, and if the workers' comp is there, that's just going to be in general the only insurance that's being used, unless there is some other crazy part to it. But that will be the only part that's typically used is within workers' comp. Mhm.
Okay. Have you seen that you were able to help decrease the cost of the overarching workers' comp insurance with the programming that you're doing?
So I don't have a specific number, but they have definitely seen the decrease. That's pretty much what my HR tells me, is just they've seen the decrease. And the way that I know that for sure is the past, let me make sure I say this right. I believe it's been the past 3 years. They've seen it decrease so much that they've actually donated. I think it's been about 5 to 6 thousand a year to put more equipment into the city gym, because they're seeing,
Wow.
yeah, so they're seeing such a decrease in it that they're actually wanting to give us more so that we can keep working with them to keep seeing that decrease. So some of it goes towards stuff that I need and things that I need replaced, but then the rest of it will go towards to like a new machine that everybody has been really wanting, or if the kettlebells look really beat up, replacing the kettlebells. But usually it goes towards a new machine because even the employees have noticed that this is happening. And so throughout the whole year, they'll walk by and we need a hack squat. And I'm like, okay, well, that's expensive. So I have a little notebook that I tally when somebody comes by and says what they want. And so if a hack squat was what they wanted, which is what we did recently get for this past year, I would have a tally of how many people said it, and that's how I typically choose what's the big machine we're buying because so many people asked for it. So I even have a little notebook that I keep track of that and everything. But they haven't told me specific numbers, but enough to tell me that, hey, we're investing in you because we've seen the decrease.
Yeah. So with the prevention and maintenance programs that you're
Mhm.
implementing, are there any measures on that also that you've been keeping track of, or is that a little bit harder to track?
I will admit for me personally, that's been a little bit harder to track just because with where I'm at, I haven't been able to put too much injury prevention work in. Um, but I know, like I said, we do work a little bit with GSU, and so I know they have a little bit more numbers on what they've seen, specifically on the firefighters and their fitness levels and that kind of stuff. So I know when I was with GSU as a GA, we did do FMS every year to see what's their likelihood and compare did you get injured and that to that. But in general, I don't have much on that. Um, the hard part about this setting is what we have found is no matter how much injury prevention we do, you're still going to see the injuries. And a lot of that just comes purely from the fact of what gear they're wearing, how
Mhm.
they have to wear it, how they have to maneuver. Because I mean, if you think about it, a lot of times most firefighters and police officers they have low back pain. All of them have low back pain. But how do you prevent that? Of course, we usually go with core and strengthen the back and all this stuff. But you can't tell them not to throw on the tank when they need to go into a fire and save somebody. And
Yeah.
half the reason that that's happening is because the tank is on their back and they have all this extra gear on. And now, I hate saying this, but they'll tell you usually the people they're dragging out, it's not the one that you dream of a 50-pound person. It's usually the 300-pound person that's stuck and now they're dragging him out.
Yeah.
So I hate saying injury prevention won't work because it definitely does work. We've seen that before. But in this setting, it can be very difficult to even get numbers because I can't stop them from going and running that call.
Yeah.
Same thing with police officers. All of their gear, there's lots out there now about the outer carry and the inner carry and how much they carry on their belt and everything like that. And so a huge argument was with having the outer carry, everybody's going to have less low back pain. But the moment that happened, all of my police officers started having more shoulder injuries. And you're just moving it from one place to the other. And so even if we try to strengthen the shoulders, strengthen the back, all this stuff, we're still seeing a lot of injuries because you can't make them take off that gear. You can't make them have to maneuver in different ways because if you're an officer and you have to take somebody down, it doesn't matter how you take them down, you have to take them down. So
Yeah.
um, now it's a little bit different when you're talking about, more the municipal side of, people at City Hall and stuff like that, that you can actually see. But again, you're seeing more like carpal tunnel um, uh, and I'm trying to think of,
They're
and
not
just
throwing out their
tight
back
necks.
when they're
Yeah,
wrestling the
exactly.
copy
Yes.
machine.
Yeah, no, no. Although some of them would claim it. But yeah, so it's just kind of depending on who you're working with. But in general, the biggest thing I would say with any of the injury prevention that we're doing is just make them move. I can't say that I have numbers, but that's one thing is just getting them up and moving because it's amazing how many times you'll be like, hey, all you really need to do is maybe take a 5-minute walk break and your back would feel better because you've been sitting in a chair all day. And they'll start
Yeah.
implementing this 5-minute walk break and they're like, whoa, you're right. This is amazing. So it's just simple things like that even. So I wish I
Yeah.
did have numbers, but
Well, and I think with the fire and police, like just the agility and functionality of moving through structures, like you had mentioned, I don't, it's very hard to recreate that in the training. And
Yes.
if it's a life or death situation, you got to do what you got to do.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
that's why it's important to have an athletic trainer.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So you talked about the FMS evaluation.
Mhm.
Are you guys running the, is it an annual test, like the fitness test and all that stuff? Are you responsible for that also?
No, I'm not responsible for that. GSU does the annual fitness testing for the firefighters.
Okay.
And so each fire and police do have all of their annual stuff that they have to do. Fire's a little bit more in depth, while police is a little bit more simpler. It's more requalify your shooting and
Yeah.
make sure that you can do a certain amount of push-ups and that kind of stuff. While fire gets a little bit more in depth. But of course, our fire department gets a really in-depth one because of the fact that GSU will run through it. So, but yeah, I'm not, I used to be a part of it when I was a graduate assistant, but now that I'm here, I kind of just let them take care of that. And then all of them come back to me and say, hey, I got this score on my bone density level. What can I
Hmm.
do to help with my bone density level? Or what can I do to prevent any injuries from this? And so that's usually how we've kind of come up with how it works is if there's something really major, then GSU will come and bring it to my attention and we'll start specifically putting a program together for that person. So that is a way we do get to incorporate the injury prevention. Police wise, I don't get to do that as much. But the other part too is we do our annual health fair that they do for the city. And that is one thing I try to stress to all of them is just to come in and have me just do a general evaluation of just their posture. Um,
Hmm.
I've had like one person take me up on that because it's hard to want to leave your job and take part of your lunch break to come want to get an evaluation of your general posture to try to help with that too. Um,
Yeah.
but we do have it where we have that little bond with GSU where we can kind of figure out how do we do these injury prevention programs properly. Um, but again, we're kind of trying to make sure that we both let each other have a little bit here and there and everything. But in general, a lot of my patients are great though, and even when they're feeling like a tiny little tweak, it's like it just hurts like a little bit. Like they come in immediately at this point. Sometimes I'm like, did you really have to come in? And but but at least even they know that even if it's a small tweak, they can come in and say, hey, what exercises can I do to try to help this? And a lot of times that's what it is. What exercises can I do? And then I don't see them again unless it's serious. So,
Yeah.
mhm,
That's nice.
yeah.
Um, so you guys don't do a yearly like medical examination then, just the functional physical.
Yeah, just functional, but they do, yes, they do have to do a yearly. Every single employee does.
Okay.
Mainly because, the part of your benefits, if you do this, then you save money on your benefits. And so everybody, yeah, exactly. Everybody is required to go to their primary care physician and do an actual yearly checkup. How's everything going? Most of them, because of their age, has to get their EKG, blood work, everything like that. So all the employees do that. How much I get to be involved with that depends on the patient, though. If they bring back their results to me or anything like that. But typically, I'm about a 50-50. Some of them will bring it back to me and say, what can I do? While others, you know, wait till the injury happens and then I get to see them.
So are there any other challenges that you want to talk about with utilizing workers' comp in your setting?
um, If there's any challenge that I would say, it's just making sure that the patient understands that they need to put in their first report of injury. I've ran in it too many times where they didn't think it was important enough to put it in, and then by the time I say that, hey, you do need to go, to the doctor, it's out of that time frame that they were allowed to put it in.
Yeah.
So it just depends, but that would be one thing I would stress. And then, the other part that I would stress is how do I word this? Um, Understanding your state. And I know I said that earlier, but understanding your state because there are states that do allow you to be directly involved in this. While my state, like I said, I've had to kind of work my way into it,
Hmm.
and learn the case managers, learn the case jesters, and I've gotten to a point where like we're all on first name basis and we have each other's cell phone numbers and I pretty much know who they're seeing. But I think it's just important that you remind them to do their first report of injury, that you figure out what your state allows and doesn't allow, and that you're really protecting the patient. Because you also don't want to think that you can do something, and you think you can provide the rehab, but then really you didn't actually have the permission to do that. And thankfully, like I said, I've got amazing doctors. They've always signed off saying, yes, Marissa can work with you. But if you don't get that and then something goes wrong, then you're running into a whole nother legal aspect. And so you want to make sure that you're working with every single part to actually make sure that you're doing what's right for the patient. And sometimes that has been, hey, I don't have the equipment for you as much as you want to work with me. I don't
Hmm.
have an Ultra G treadmill and you need that right now. And so you have to go to PT. And I've actually had some fight with me. No, I don't. I don't want to go to that. Like, I want to work with you. I get it. But, also be prepared to have that conversation with the patient of, I don't have everything I need for you as much as I wish I did. But you need to go here, to make sure you're getting the proper care. So many of them are like, one of the biggest fights is when they have to go back to the doctor to get, or even to the PT to get their stitches out. Why can't you take them out? Because I'm not supposed to be the one taking them out. So why you need to go. So I would also make sure that you're ready to, protect yourself too. As much as we're there to protect the patient, also be there to protect yourself, because you also don't want to overstep boundaries that you're not supposed to overstep.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
think that's one thing that we keep adding all this scope and all this stuff.
Hmm.
And it's like, it's great that we know it, that we can do it. But then I think we lose track of
Hmm.
what are your practicing orders and all that type of stuff.
Yes.
So taking
Hmm.
out stitches are super easy, but you still need to do the wound check. And usually the
Exactly.
doctors like to see that
Hmm.
ultimately.
Exactly.
So,
Yes. Hmm.
uh,
Raise the bar in 2025. Complete your BOC certification maintenance requirements early. Don't forget that 2025 is a reporting year for athletic trainers. Are you on track to complete your BOC certification maintenance requirements? Find out today by logging into your BOC profile at bocatc.org/BOC360. That's right, it's time, and this year is the year to renew your certification maintenance requirements. Check it out at bocatc.org/BOC360.
so talking about like the state level and what you've had to push through in other states or even in your state
Hmm.
still, um, what needs to happen to make it easier for athletic trainers to work with workers' comp or even just be in the um, public sector, would you say?
Well, I think the big thing is going to be, just advocating for it in general. We all know it's out there. We know that there's tactical athlete settings. You get to see it with fire, police, military. Um, I can't completely say that this is by any means true, but I have struggled finding anybody else that works with like a whole city in general.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful I find one because I would love to talk to them. But I think it's about trying to just get the word out, and we are trying to do that. We are trying to move to other cities and other places. But I think the big thing to get this, more out there and more available is, um, honestly getting more contracts and being able to do that. But having help, from our state specifically, and even at the NATA level, they're slowly trying to add in more about tactical athletes and stuff like that. But getting the support and being able to even have, possibly more data ran. How do we get that? And, of course, that runs into grants, and how do we get those grants and all the fun stuff there. But I think, the biggest thing is keeping our data so that we can keep pushing our data out there and showing how much is being saved, being able to go and present this in front of HRs, But I think a big thing is having the resilience for all of this, because the patients deserve having somebody through workers' comp, because workers' comp can be very difficult and it's not always easy. Um, and so showing them that having a voice through this whole thing can be very helpful. But having this data, because when you go present this, you're not just presenting it in front of the people you would expect. You're going in front of county council, city council. You have to get so many things approved, and then on
Mm-hmm.
top of it, you have to think about, um, usually for most cities and counties, they have to have somebody opposing you. And so when you go in, you have to be ready that they won't even give you the deal because there's not another company over here that can oppose you, because usually they have to go through the offers of what's given.
Yeah.
So, I think the big thing is keeping the data ready to present that to them, because that's what is going to be the big sell. Um, that's what they want to see. They don't, I remember going in front of one of the county councils, and I went through everything I could provide, but all they cared about was how much did I save? How much did workers' comp save? Um, how often can I see people? They're very straightforward. So it's making sure that you have the data that shows this is how I helped with workers' comp, and this is how we prevented certain injuries, so that they can actually see the return of investment.
So you had mentioned HR, which
Mhm.
I have a tiff with. I think they hold up a lot of things, but they do great things too.
Yes.
But I guess if somebody wanted to go present to an HR department, what would be the top 3 things that they would be most interested in?
Top 3 things is going to be how much money have you saved in a year and then overall. Um, how many workers' comp cases have you worked with? And be very specific on that. These are the amount that needed surgery. These are the amount that were only out for a few weeks, but we're still in a boot, that kind of stuff. You want to make sure you have those specific numbers. And then also, how many sessions of rehab treatment modalities did you do with each of these workers' comp cases? Because then they can go back, because you won't know for any of these, you won't actually know what their insurance will actually charge them, because each one's going to be different. They can
Mm.
take these numbers you just gave them, go look at all of their workers' comp cases, and calculate it all out. And then they can actually see how much they would have saved if they had you there. But you also, I know this is a fourth one, you also don't want to forget to mention all of the other stuff you do, because that can be a big sell as well. So even though that injury wasn't workers' comp, the thing they have to remember is if somebody did um, end up, I keep going ankle sprains. I feel like it's because it's the most basic thing to go ahead and
Yeah.
give an example to, but somebody had an ankle sprain because they were out at the beach and feeling like they were 12 again and sprained their ankle. Well, they still technically are out of work,
Yeah.
but workers' comp isn't covering it. So now the city still has to find the person for overtime, has to go through that whole process. But um, so that even still affects them, even though it's not a workers' comp case. So you want to also be able to show all of those so that you can see um, the good side of that as well, even if it's not an injury that happened at work, because there is so many things. I know I caught one of the city councils off guard when I said that I can see anybody that's on the city's insurance. So even if it
Mhm.
was their 5-year-old kid, I'm allowed to
Mm.
see them and evaluate the injury. Now that's a little bit different on what I can do, and how much I'm
Yeah.
allowed to work with them, but even they can come in. And so, building up that rapport of showing that you can even see them, that can be very helpful as well, because then you're also selling the family aspect of it.
Yeah. That's very interesting ultimately.
Hmm.
This is
Yeah.
very unique where you're at.
I feel like I'm giving you way more than workers' comp. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
No, it's just that if we're gonna try to, keep penetrating this setting, I
Hmm.
think these are the things that people need to know, because
Yeah.
we just look at the tactical athlete,
Hmm.
and that is a very small and specific
Hmm.
demographic.
Yes.
But if you can, everybody wants to be treated and
Mhm.
have that concierge service. So it's how you're selling it and setting it up so that
Yes.
somebody actually considers this as a really good idea.
Mhm.
You know, I keep talking with my dad, and he's like, well, you guys are basically the firefighters of medicine, even though there's EMS.
Mhm.
But, we're kind of sitting around waiting for injuries to happen on the
Yep.
athletic field and stuff. And some people just see that. You got your team so healthy that you don't have
Mhm.
to respond most of the
Yes.
time, but they don't understand the back work behind the scenes and the stuff that doesn't happen in the public eye. So,
Mhm.
I think these are great points ultimately if you're trying to sell it to a public entity, a government entity, is
Yeah.
they want to see all the perks for themselves too. So,
Mhm.
no, this is awesome. Um, so, and the fourth one, I'll give it to you. That was a good
Okay.
point
Awesome.
ultimately.
Good.
So, we talked about advocating for
Mhm.
yourself in these spaces.
Yeah.
What else do you have for trying to push this along in other environments or just in other states and cities?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest sells, and it's what we say all the time when you work with tactical athletes, is just giving back to those who give to us. I mean, you want to make sure that you're showing that you're doing this because you really care. Because in this setting, it is a family. Not that a high school setting or a college setting is not a family, but it is because it's actually very hard for public safety to trust anybody. And so you also have to be ready for some pushback if you do get into this setting, because it's going to take a little bit for them to trust you. And you do have to have some thicker bones, I guess I would say, because there is a lot of being made fun of and kind of being pushed around, and not in a bad way. Because as weird as it is, if you're in the public safety setting and you're getting made fun of, that means they like you. So,
So we're
if
back in
you're
high school.
exactly, you're back in high school all over again. But once they trust you, you want to be ready for that because the moment they trust you, you're about the only one they do trust. And so when they come to you and say, what doctor should I go to and stuff like that, one, you want to be ready for, and this is what I was getting mixed up earlier on, is if you're a directive or non-directive state. And so this came from Tracy, and I always say her last name wrong. Um, but she's really big in the public safety realm, and she does a ton on the tactical side. And like I said, I butcher her last name,
She's
so I'm just
in
not even gonna attempt it.
Fairfax, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I know who you're talking about.
So
Yes.
okay, good. I butcher it every time, and I'm like, dang it. But um, you want to also understand that because now I lost my train of thought because I got stuck on the name. But you want to understand that because that kind of helps if who they can go to really.
Yeah.
Because with where I'm at, they can't specifically. They've got a list of doctors that they can see, and depending on who is on their actual board. So thankfully, Optum is the only one on our board, so I know they're going to one of my doctors. But if they have a couple companies on their board, I can't, at that point, you can't guarantee they're going to yours. And so you also want to be prepared for that part as well, because if they're not always going to go to the doctors that you work under, you won't have as much access to them. That doctor might not be able to tell you that you can work with them. And so you also want to make sure you dig into that as well. I didn't want to forget to mention that. And
Hmm.
so, like I know with mine, if I did have a second person, I need to be prepared for that. But thankfully, they only have Optum on their board, so I'm very lucky, and I can just directly go to there. But the example Tracy gave me was like in Wisconsin and everything. They can actually choose where they want to go, and so with that, you know, that's great because I know that can help the patient. But with all of that being said, even whichever one you're in, being prepared to tell them which doctor they should see and that kind of stuff can help a lot. And that's what they're ready to hear from you because at the end of the day, like I said, they trust you. They don't know that
Hmm.
doctor, they don't know them. And because they don't know them, they don't trust them yet. And so you want to be prepared to give the proper advice for them as well. Because you also have to show your trust in the doctor because your trust in the doctor allows them to trust them more. And so, big thing is getting to know your doctors, especially when it comes to the workers' comp side, because depending on where you're at, Where I'm at, they have a line basically. And so this doctor is up, so that's the doctor they go to. And then that doctor falls back to the end of the line and that next doctor's up. Well, the
Hmm.
problem with that is if I have a trigger finger and everything, well, most orthopedics can do that, but I probably want them to go to a hand and wrist specialist. And
Hmm.
so, um, but if that doctor at the top is just general orthopedic and I know that, then I can make the phone call and say, hey, no, they need to go to so and so because this is going to be a hand and wrist specialist. And now you just save the city money as well because you bypass that extra doctor's appointment. And so
Yep.
that's another aspect to it, with workers' comp is understanding the process of how they select the doctors. And so that's been very helpful. But to do that, you also have to build that relationship with the doctors. And so, if I do go and I bump one of my doctors because I'm trying to just bypass them, they're not mad at me for that because they know the next time that somebody needs to specifically go to them, I'm going to bump the other doctor
Yeah.
and get them in with that one. Um, so I think it's also making sure that you understand the process of how they choose which doctor to go to and you
Hmm.
being ready to talk to each doctor individually on how can they get the best proper care. And so a lot of that comes with being at the doctor's appointments, learning the doctors, and I don't want to say schmoozing them because I love my doctors and I don't want my I don't want my doctors to look at this and be like, "Oh, she's only been schmoozing me." No, I've
It's
loved
only
getting
transactional.
I know, yeah, exactly. But I have actually loved getting to know them and being able to ask them about their kids and everything like that, but really getting to know them because it not only helps you with your patients and everything, but when the doctors trust you and everything, and they're even calling you and, saying, how are you doing? And that kind of stuff, it helps because it just helps with the whole process of being there for each other and being able to get everybody the right treatment and all of that. I mean, and even treatment for yourself too. I mean, I've had doctors and PTs call me and they're like, Marissa, you're taking on too much and I need you to stop. It's hard not to want to take on too much. But the fact that even they're there for you as well because they're seeing you through workers' comp processes, injuries outside of it as well. Them calling you because you have that relationship. I know I'm stressing that relationship so much, but it not
No.
only helps patients, but it helps you as an AT as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think I've seen that pop up as a theme of
Hmm.
some of these younger athletic trainers aren't even coming and introducing themselves to other athletic trainers on the sideline.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure where this is coming from and why they don't feel like communication is key or networking or relationships. But when there's a tough situation, those relationships really get you out of the hole. So
Yes. Yes, they do.
so the future and professional
Hmm.
development wise, in the education system that you are familiar with
Hmm.
or general Katie standards, what do you think are some topics that would help with the public sector ultimately?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. um, I think a lot of it is going to come down to I don't want to go so far as saying there needs to be an actual course on it, but there almost does need to be some type of, even if it's a block inside of a certain semester, that the students are learning about this. Because even with my students right now that I get, a lot of times they come in and they're like, I don't even know that this is a thing. Like, I didn't know there's industrial. I didn't know there's tactical. And so, but then when they come in, they also don't understand what to expect or how it works. And a lot of them come in pumped for emergency medical care, and then I'm like, we don't do much of that. And they're like, what do you mean you don't do much of that? You literally work with emergency people. And I'm like, well, that's your answer right there.
They're doing
I,
the emergency care.
they're doing the emergency care, not that I don't ever get to, especially heat related illnesses, they tend to leave that with me. But
Yeah.
anything else, somebody falls off a ladder, that doesn't really ever happen here. So, I've never seen that happen. I'm just coming up with a random example, and they need help and everything. Half the time it's not even me going up there because you got a paramedic, you got an advanced EMT, everybody there can help. And so I think really the big thing is maybe having a section about it, or even if it's a section in one of our textbooks that explains what we do, a little in depth on things to expect, how we do treat our tactical athletes, our industrial athletes, that kind of stuff. Just because nobody, none of these students are coming in understanding what it's going to be like. They all
Yeah.
end up having a wonderful experience, but I guess future is making it more readily available for these students to have preceptors that are in the setting.
Hmm.
And then also maybe trying to figure out how to put a section in a book or teaching about it in class, so that they do understand this is an option. Um, Bringing in guest speakers too. I think that's a big thing too, of bringing in people who have actually been in the setting and stuff like that, because, I know you can see it. We're all out here. We're trying to get it out there more. But it can be hard to get to the students sometimes, because a lot of times it's at a conference. Well, these students don't necessarily have the money to be at that conference right now because they're paying for their schooling. So, I would
Yeah.
say even bringing in guest speakers to the students and making that a little bit more readily available um, for them, which I'm trying my best on that. I've got a few schools that are sending me their immersion students, but even if we could get more immersion students into these settings, I think that would help a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
So with the community of athletic trainers
Hmm.
in the public safety realm, so PSATs,
Hmm.
um, what is PSATs doing to get themselves out there, and what does PSATs provide you as a member?
Yes. So, as a member, um, continuing education credits, which, I mean, we all need those. um, they do a yearly conference, where pretty much it gives everybody the opportunity that's in this realm to come together. Right now, they are doing it mainly online just because we're all so sporadic and everything. But
Yeah.
bringing us all together, and really the cool part is the topics are just so specific to what we're doing that, like, it's so hard not to want to engage in what that person's talking about, because it's like finally somebody who understands. Because most of us, where we're at, you might have one other person working with you, but every other athletic trainer around you is one at the high school, and they have no idea what you're talking about. Because I mean, it can be so crazy. If you have to spine board somebody, there's a whole other process of spine boarding, because now you're
Hmm.
talking about thousands of dollars of gear that you're not supposed to cut. So what do you do? So there's a whole nother aspect, but I think that's a big thing about the conference is being able to see that there are people out there that understand what you're going through. Um, they're doing their best to make sure that they're putting out videos monthly to bring in attention to it. Uh, they're also there to help advocate for you when you need it. So they make it very clear. Don't be scared to send an email to us. Send something when there's something hard that you're going through that you need help. So when we did go through that thing of the part of the military saying we're not going to have ATs anymore. I don't know if you saw that, but they did have
Yep.
that for a while. And not only did NATA speak up, you also had a ton of PSATS members that spoke up and were calling government people and saying, this is a bad idea. You need to get your ATs back, that kind of stuff. So they're also ready to go to bat basically for us as well if something like that happens. So I think that right now they're just doing a really good job trying to get us out there, because even they're still in that process of where do we push this towards. But I do think that they're on the right track. They're building it up. They're putting their voice out there. They're finding the right people to um, do these videos that have been in it for years. I mean, I won't lie, I was shocked when I got asked to do one, because I'm like, there's somebody over there that has like 20 years of experience, but it's kind of like you said, this is such a workers' comp is such a different thing. So, but it was awesome. But they are doing a great job. Like I said, I think it's still kind of at the beginning, but at the end of the day, they're putting their voice out there. They're advertising really well. They're trying to bring people in. And the other thing I would say is I don't think that they're putting a huge cost to it. They just want people to be a part of it. So it's a very low cost to even join, to be able to have a community that provides for you. So
Yeah. No,
mhm.
that's awesome. Do you need to be in the public safety realm to be a member?
No, you do not. Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, they would love anybody to be in it because they also will post all those all the job positionings that are there too
Oh.
to try to get you into it. So they do when somebody knows about one, that community is immediately putting it in the little Facebook chat and I mean, so that everybody knows where it's at. So that's also another part that's very helpful. They're constantly trying to make sure that they're updating where positions are open and everything like that. But no, you do not have to. I try to encourage my students to get into it too. I don't think I've been successful on any of them, but again, I have to remind myself they're in school and
True.
and we all know it's very hard to have a job and do athletic training. So in school at least. So
Yeah. And then for the work in public safety
mhm.
and the workers' comp piece that we
Yep.
were hitting on today, how do you think this will shape the future of athletic training and job opportunities or even skills?
Mhm. I definitely think that this will it's already showing how much it's growing first of all. So I think it's going to open up a lot of job opportunities for athletic trainers as the years go on, which I think is wonderful. And I say it already has shown because when I first started out um in this setting, I want to say the PSATs had a little thing of showing which state had somebody, and they would color them in when I first started out, there were 7, and that was 6 years ago, I think ish. Yep, 6 years. Showing my age now, but but and then now they just came out with it, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. I'm pretty sure it's up to 32 states that are shaded in now, where at least one athletic trainer is doing a tactical setting, which I think is wonderful. So you're
Nice.
already seeing this growth. And so I think that one, it's going to open up more job opportunities. I think that it's going to allow athletic trainers to explore a little bit more. I could see it maybe turning into a specialty. And maybe you do have to go get a little bit more classes in, sadly, as much as we love classes. I do think it could turn into that because there are some things you have to understand that are very different compared to other settings. You know, one basic example I can give you, and it doesn't seem anything crazy, but if you're doing treatment on somebody, the experience of having to, even if it's just the simple stem unit is on, ripping off those pads as quickly as you can because a call came out, because they don't care about your equipment. That
Yep.
sounds terrible. They do not care about that $3,000 a piece of equipment. If it's still stuck to them and they need to go because a fire is happening, they're running out. They don't care. So that's just a random example, but just even things like that, I think that there's going to maybe be some courses later on that are going to be required. Um, but the big thing that it's something that's resonated with me. I do think that tactical and industrial will become a bigger thing as athletic training goes on because it is, I still do a decent amount, but it's not as taxing, I would say, on um, the body because you're in a more controlled environment most of the time. You're
Hmm.
most of the time are in a setting where you're doing the rehab, you're at the tables, you're not, you aren't running around the field and walking back and forth and bending down all the time and all that and everything because you're getting to the level of the athlete that's on the field and everything. And so I could see it being something that's considered later on. So you've done your few years of your athletics and you loved it and it was amazing, but now you've grown wiser. I don't like to use the other word, but you have grown wiser in your life, and you need something that's a little bit more of a controlled environment. You do need a 9 to 5 job. You want to be able to um, go home because you have kids. You don't want to have to worry about that Friday night football game. And
Yeah.
now you get to go home and have dinner with your kids every night. That kind of stuff. I do think it's a little bit more steady and a little less, I guess, physically taxing on the body. So I could see it being something that you look into, like I said, as you grow a little wiser in your life. So I can see that being a big reason that it grows a lot as well, because that is something that's really different too. Um, I have a normal work week. I don't work nights. I don't work weekends. And so I'm a very odd athletic trainer. I don't have those stories of I didn't get home till 3 in the morning, because that's how far away the football game was. I get home pretty much the same every night, and I get my weekends, which is wonderful. So I could see that being a big sell for this as well, and why it grows so much.
Yeah. Well, and not to downgrade any other setting, but it is
Hmm.
a tactical athlete, which is still very applicable to the
Yes.
sports side of athletic
Hmm.
training. So I think the transition would be quite natural ultimately,
Oh, yeah.
other than not the game coverage or the full
Yes.
emergency care that we like to do sometimes. But
Oh, yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yes, it
And then
is.
last question. So with your contract, are you a
Mhm.
government employee? Are you contracted by somebody else? How is that
Yeah.
set up?
Yes, so I am actually contracted through Optum Health System. So I am through, um, so we're kind of a weird one. We have Optum Orthopedics and Optum Health System. Optum Health System handles all the sports medicine. So I'm still labeled under sports medicine with everybody else. But then we work under a physician at Optum Orthopedics so that we're all kind of connected.
Okay.
So I'm still kind of in the normal type setup where you're working under some type of hospital setting and they're in charge of you and you're just sent out to where you're at. That being said, though, I do know that there's quite a few that are under government contracts as well. That
Hmm.
was the original plan for me, actually, was the city was going to do that. But by the time city council had voted on it and everything like that, it wasn't in the budget for that year. And so Optum actually stepped up and was like, hey, um, we will gladly create a contract with them. And it ended up working out to where by doing that contract, a specific department was able to say, hey, we'll pay for her this year and then we'll just have it added into the budget next year. And it just ended up working out perfectly. Um, and I would say for people who are looking into this, that's another good question because you kind of have to ask yourself what you're going for. If you go on the government side of things, it's wonderful in so many other ways for the athletic trainer themselves because you are a government employee that can a lot of times mean some better insurance for them, better days off. You, you also have this one gets me, but if you are looking at trying to get your student loans taken care of and stuff like that, if you are in the government side of things, you work for them for 5 years and you can also get your student loans forgiven.
Hmm.
And so that's something to consider as well when you're trying to make these contracts. But then if you look at it from the other side where I'm at, there is other perks to it too. You have people who actually understand the certifications that you need to keep up with. You have somebody that
Yep.
understands the fact that you have to pay your BOC every year and you have to pay your state licensure, and typically they help you with that and everything. Not saying that the government side doesn't understand that, but usually you are basically your boss when you go on the government side, and then you have your
Yep.
physician that watches over you, and that's what you have. But when you're actually working under the hospital that understands the sports medicine side, then you do have somebody there to back you up that understands what you're doing, why you need all these certifications, and then it also helps the patients. So me being with Optum, I have all this access to the doctors. And like I said, I can call in 2 seconds. My doctor's like, yeah, bring him in. Just skip the line. It's fine. Bring him in. But if I work specifically on the government side of things in where I'm at, I wouldn't always have that access to all of the doctors. I'd have that access to the one physician I work under,
Yeah.
and and stuff like that. But then that would also affect the physical therapy. And so you do have to kind of ask yourself which side you want to go towards. Do you want to be your own boss? Do you want to have to go through some of the hardships of that side, or do you want to have somebody there that you have a community still and stuff like that? So both sides have good things. You just have to be ready to ask yourself which one you want. And
Yep.
they have their perks and everything like that. And there are things that can be weird. So since I'm with Optum, I have Optum holidays, and so I will be working on days that nobody's there because they all have a holiday off that I don't have because it's a government. It's the government, so it's like, okay, so what do I do? So then I'm doing a bunch of paperwork and half the time it's reorganizing the gym, which, hey, you need those days. So it's, but it's just things like that that you have to think about when you're picking which one you go through. I think it worked out really well for me. And I really love where I ended up, but it's just all about what you feel comfortable with.
Definitely. Well, this was great interview, great information.
Yes.
If somebody had more questions, how would they connect with you?
Best way is probably through email. So would you like me to actually spell
You
that
can put
all
it up here.
out,
Yeah, sure.
or?
Why not?
Okay. So best way would be to just email me at my work email, which is going to be M Villafuerte. So I'll spell it out, but MVILLAFUERTE at optumhealth.com. That will be the
Perfect.
best way to get a hold of me. I am terrible at emails, though, even though that's the best way, in the sense of I will get back really quickly to you, but my typing skills are not as the most amazing as they should be. So
Well,
forgive
I
me
reply in
on
my
that.
head and think it's
Yeah.
done. That's where
Yes.
we're at in technology. Is I'm pretty sure it does it, but it
Exactly.
hasn't fully come through yet.
Exactly. But yeah, so just forgive me on that part. Uh,
Okay. Well, I do hope people reach out because I do
yeah.
think the information is great. I
Mhm.
think you and the PSATs are advocating super well.
Mhm.
It's definitely been on my radar, so you guys are doing great on the marketing. And I'm hoping that we can place more athletic trainers in these positions across the US because I do think it is very valuable. I think the people that are providing life or death support or life-saving support, not that they're
Yes.
killing people, but the life-saving support and safety of
Mhm.
our communities. And I do think we take it for granted for all that they do. So thank you
Mhm.
for helping them out.
Oh, of course. I absolutely love it. I hope we can get more people into it. I really do. Mhm.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
thank you for getting to the bone on workers' comp. And you're always
Yes.
invited back. So let me know if you have any other awesome topics to talk about. I'm sure other people want to learn more. So I'm
Perfect.
hoping to have you on in the future.
Yes, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
That's it for today's episode of To the Bone. I hope we've sparked some new thoughts, challenged your perspectives, or simply reminded you to dig a little deeper. Remember, life isn't just about what's on the surface. Sometimes you've got to cut deeper and get to the bone of what really matters. To the Bone podcast is a product of Daily LLC. It's hosted and produced by Shelby Daly, ATC, and Randy Daly. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present. For more on the show, visit www.tothebonepodcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Get involved in the conversation. You can find us at www.tothebonepodcast.com. Drop us topic suggestions or be a potential guest. We're all about connecting with you, our listeners. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep cutting deep.